What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 366 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we are joined by Dr. Paul White. He is the co-author of The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And if that sounds familiar, that's because his co-author for that book is Gary Chapman, the author of The 5 Love Languages. So we get into all of this, the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace, what that looks like, some case studies there, lots to get into with this one with Dr. Paul White. But before we get into this, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA, if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Patio SEO has hopped on board as a sponsor, and they are a leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times, some of our more popular episodes, and he owns hardscape businesses across the country. And now you can have access to the same in-house marketing team that he has access to at patioseo.com. So if you're looking for a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, check them out at patioseo.com. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. And if you're looking for a software to help you with your employees, check out the How to Hardscape headquarters software that will help you budget, estimate, job cost, time track, schedule, employee management tools, and point reward system for employees for showing your appreciation for them. You can check that out at hthheadquarters.com. That is How to Hardscape, hthheadquarters.com, or click the link in the show notes, or send me a message at How to Hardscape on Instagram. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Dr. Paul White. Today we're joined by Dr. Paul White. He is a psychologist, author, speaker who makes work relationships work. And I love that. And I love the topic that we're going to get into today. He's written articles for BBC News, Business Week, New York Times, Entrepreneur.com, Fast Company, Forbes. He's a co-author of the best-selling book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, selling over 800,000 copies. And that's written with Dr. Gary Chapman. So Dr. Paul White, thank you so much for joining us here.
You bet. I'm glad to be with you.
Let's get started to get to know a little bit more about you yourself, how you kind of got into this whole make work relationships work type of thing. So just start wherever you want, end wherever you want.
Sure. So I'm a psychologist, and the first part of my career, I'm at the tail end of my career now, hopefully. But the first part of my career, I focused on testing students that have learning difficulties. So ADHD and dyslexia and all kinds of stuff. Did that 25 years. And then mid-career, I grew up in the context of a family-owned business. It was a manufacturing firm. And some friends of mine were consultants to family businesses, and they kept running into family issues. And so I started traveling around the country working with successful family businesses, dealing with the family issues, both of, working together and then sort of who's going to own it and who's going to run it and do that kind of thing. And partway through that, I was talking to a business owner in North Carolina and asked him, how's the succession plan going? He says, it's going well. My son's stepping up. I think it'll work. I walked across the hall and asked the son the same question. And he said, this is a disaster. It's never going to work. I can't ever please my dad. And so I could understand that, not because of his dad, but just that dynamic. And so my wife and I were reading The 5 Love Languages at that time. And I thought, I wonder if these concepts could help out in the workplace. So I pursued Dr. Chapman. Took me a year to get in to him, and then pitched the idea and agreed. And we sort of, not love in the workplace, but we figured that appreciation was the equivalent concept. And so wrote the book together and developed an online assessment. And we even have a specific version for trades now. And then training materials that small companies and so forth can use. So been doing that, and it's been a good run. People need to know that they're valued and appreciated. And it's not just to make people feel good. I mean, lots of good research to show how it makes the company run and work better. So I've been glad to be able to help out.
I think there's a lesson somewhere in there of persistence, possibly. 1 year took you to get in with Gary Chapman. Can you talk about what that kind of persistence was like on your end to get in?
Yeah, I think perseverance and persistence is a pretty core characteristic to be successful in whatever you're doing. So he was in North Carolina, and located him. I would call and talk to his assistant, and she said, "I'll give him the message." And he was really busy. I mean, he sold 25 million books and speaks and all that. And so, anyway, I just every about 2 months I'd call back and say, "Hey, let you know," and I'd give her a little more information. And finally, he agreed he was coming to where I live in Wichita, Kansas, and to do a conference and gave me 45 minutes. And actually, I think he gave me 30 and it turned into 45, but pitched the idea. And then um, we were aligned. I mean, I was a psychologist, so I had the people side. I was working with businesses, and then sort of thankfully, he and I had gone to the same undergraduate college, and so I think I had a foot in the door that way. So there was some inherent trust that way. So that's how it happened.
That's awesome. Now, the five love languages, I was talking to you just before we started. My wife and I went through that and really great. Um, the book itself, but applying it to the workplace is awesome. I really like the idea, but more so the language, five languages of appreciation as opposed to love language, obviously, in the workplace there. Before we get into that, was this something that you as well were introduced to it with your wife, your partner, and that's how you kind of found that it could also apply to the workplace, or what was the introduction for you on your end?
Yeah, no, I'm a slow learner, so I think we had gone through it 3 times or so, you know, and trying to apply it. And I'm a words guy, and I would praise her and all that, and she's a quality time person. And if I didn't, give her time, and if I wasn't focused during that time, it didn't really land. So sort of learned personally through that, and found it really helpful.
Talking about now the five languages of appreciation, can we buzz through what they are and how somebody finds out which one they are? Specifically because I think most people are not very self-aware. I think it's a
Right.
small amount of people that are actually self-aware. So how does somebody find out which love language they are? Because if you talk to my wife, she would say she's all five, but actually narrowing down which ones they are, primary and secondary. Can we buzz through the five love languages and then how somebody actually discovers which one they are?
The five languages are words of affirmation, and that's, saying things, positive, giving compliments and that kind of thing. And that's actually the most common language in the workplace. I think we're acculturated to it. Um, I'll circle back to that in a minute. Quality time is spending time with people. Time is limited for especially bosses and supervisors, and so when you spend time with them, that communicates that they value you. We found that we do research, and we've had over almost a 500,000 people take our assessment to find out how they like to be appreciated, and found out that there's sort of a generational difference. Those that are older, I would say it's probably like maybe 45 to 50 and above, pretty much grew up where quality time was time with your manager or supervisor, and you either got to share some observations or concerns, or learn from them. For younger workers, it's clearly more about getting together with their peers and their colleagues. They don't. I tell older managers, just because you have a team member that has quality time doesn't mean they want time with you. You may be wonderful, great. They should want time, but they don't, and so they like to go hang out with their friends and that kind of stuff. Acts of service is the third language, and it's not rescuing somebody can't do their job. It's really those situations where and we work with all different kinds of industries, but like, let's say in a service industry, a whole bunch of people show up at the front desk of a dentist, at once. and the receptionists are overwhelmed, what's somebody, another colleague or the office manager can do to help out? Or when you're working on a time limited project and you've got to get it done, what's something somebody else can do to sort of throw in and help get it done? And then fourth language is tangible gifts, and it's not bonuses, raises, that kind of stuff. That's really employer employee. This is just small things that show that you're getting to know the person and what they like. So let's say it's a hot day, and you're going to bring them some kind of refreshment. What kind of pop do they like, or they prefer ice cream or something. Or it could be, a magazine about their favorite sports team, the Blue Jays or the Raptors or somebody like that. So, and it really, it's not about the money. It's more about, do you know and understand them? Because we've all gotten gifts that people spent money on and it didn't really hit us very well. And the last one is physical touch. And in North America, primarily the US and Canada, that's the lowest one. And like in New York, and I don't know the culture so much in Toronto, but it's sort of like, don't touch me. And it's spontaneous celebration. It's, what do you do when something good happens? A high five when you finish a job, or a fist bump if you solve a problem, maybe a congratulatory handshake. So, but we work internationally and with other cultures, especially Latin cultures, Hispanic, they're more physical, and it's a little bit more important to them. So, what's been interesting is to find out over time sort of how many people have what language, across the population. Words is the single most chosen language by people, but it's less than 50%. So if you only use words to encourage your team members, you're missing over 50% of your team. Um, it's about 44, 45%. Quality time is the next largest one. It's about 26%, although when you look at the lower ages, it goes up to about 36%, so it rises quite a bit. Acts of service is a solid 20%, so one out of every five people. And they're sort of the people that live by the saying, don't tell me you support me, show me. If you talk at me all the time, it's not going to get very far. Tangible gifts is an interesting one because, there's rewards and recognition programs, employee recognition kinds of things, and they focus a lot on gifts and so forth. But across cultures, it's less than 10% really feel valued and appreciated with gifts. And so there's some ways that you can raise that up by pairing it with maybe words, if that's their language. And then physical touch is less than 1% in North America.
You know what? The gifts one actually surprises me a lot that it's so low because it seems to go hand in hand that, like you mentioned, reward programs or recognition programs of sort at companies. There's even software systems selling, just employee recognition and rewards. And to see that it's just so low, that actually really surprises me. Did it surprise you as much that you found that out?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, that people don't uh, value it as much. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to give it back to you, right? But but what we found is that it's really sort of the way that it's done, that it's very sort of organizational, and everybody gets the same thing, like at Christmas or something like that. And so it doesn't feel very personal. And that's really the part. And like I said, it's not big stuff. It's stuff that shows that you're getting to know them as a person. And I think that's a key theme for us, is that recognition focuses almost totally on performance, and that's good. And we want people to do the right thing and do it frequently. But we know that the top 10% of employees tend to be the ones that get recognized, and often repeatedly. That leaves a big group, 50, 60% in the middle, that don't hear anything. And what happens, we have research shows that uh, once they found 79% of people who were voluntarily leaving a job quit because they didn't feel valued or appreciated. And so most owners and business leaders, especially smaller business leaders, think that people leave for more money. Now, they may get more money, but that's not the reason they left. They maybe can negotiate a little bit more. But people leave almost always because they don't feel valued or appreciated or heard. And so if you pay attention to that, you don't have to keep raising wages and so forth. So that's part of what's going on.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but your five languages of appreciation, your primary and secondary, can actually differ from your five love languages. So like personal relationship.
Right.
Reason being more so just the nature of the relationship or whatever you found with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously physical touch drops out, and so that impacts it. But it really is, yeah, it's the nature of the relationship. What we found, though, is that one of your top two love languages, uh, about two-thirds of the time, 67% of the time, is one of your top two words or languages of appreciation. So it's not like a total disconnect. It's just that things shift a little bit more. And people's, yeah, the nature of the relationship, as far as, maybe getting some help on a task when you're overloaded is more important, and that kind of dynamic. Yeah.
So then how does somebody find out what their primary, secondary languages of appreciation is and discover that about themselves?
Yeah, so what we found is asking people is weird. I mean, it's sort of a weird timing. How should I show you that you appreciate it? I mean, most people say, I don't know, tell me thanks, or, you know, give me a raise or something, and so you don't get much. And so we created an online assessment. It comes with the book, or you can buy it separately for your teams. And it's an online assessment, takes about 15 minutes to take. It identifies a person's primary and secondary language, their least valued one, which is not like if you do it, you're in trouble, but it's just like it doesn't mean anything. You're wasting your time and energy. And then what we found is that in the workplace, you really need to know the specifics because there's different kinds of words of affirmation. We found that 40% of the workforce don't like to be praised in front of others. And so if you praise, especially in a large group, and so if you do that, the affirmation may be good, but the context sort of undermines it. And so, just a private compliment or a handwritten note. So once we identify a person's primary language, we then give them a big checklist of different actions that they can choose that are most important and from whom they want those, whether it's their supervisor or their colleagues, or it doesn't, if anybody, it doesn't matter. So, that's really, and then we can create a group profile because we believe that it's not just for supervisors and employers to communicate appreciation. It's really too heavy of a load when you've got a big team, and so we teach teams how to show appreciation to one another. And interesting, maybe I'll send you a copy of an article that was written in the New York Times for us working with a mining company in South Dakota. And, hard hat guys, not touchy feely guys. And it's just gone really well. And because we really emphasize authenticity, that you don't just try to just look like you appreciate somebody. In fact, we tell people if you don't try to fake it. It doesn't go well. We can help you work this out. But and so it's interesting to see they actually created on their hard hats. We have symbols, visual symbols for each language, and they created symbols that they put on their hard hats to let people know what their language appreciation. And over time, it's now part of their onboarding process. That after they go through probation, 3 months or whatever, then they can take the course and go through it, and it works well. So yeah, it may sound a little self-serving, but really the inventory is probably the best and most accurate way to find out.
Couple things that I want to go off of there. You brought up a nuance there where somebody might be, say, words of affirmation, but they don't want it in public. They'd rather it in private. I would assume a similar person to that who maybe has a secondary love language of gifts, they want that in private, not in a public setting, giving them gifts. Are there any other nuances that you found through any of the five languages of appreciation, kind of like that, where yes, they want those words of affirmation or they want those gifts, but they want them in a private setting, not a public setting.
Yeah, the one thing that comes up sometimes, especially more in I would say manual labor kinds of careers is, well, if somebody has gifts and I've got words, it doesn't isn't that that's doesn't not fair. It isn't going to torque somebody off. And we just say, hey, if somebody gives you feedback that's like, well, why do they get a $20 gift, card to go to uh what's the coffee place up
Oh, Tim
there?
Hortons.
Yeah, to Tim Hortons, and you write me a handwritten note. How's that fair? And you say, I didn't know that that would be meaningful to you. I'm glad to know that that's meaningful to you, and I'd be glad to do that. So that's sort of, we uh, defang that a little bit. But no, I think that the thing is that it's personal. It's from person to person rather than organizational chart. And so that's why we teach team members. And so let's say somebody's got, maybe their phone isn't working right and somebody in IT fixes it for them, they don't report to each other organizationally, but you want to tell the person you appreciate their help. We sort of go that way. It's not top down by any means. It's across the organization, even up the organization. And that's one thing. I mean, a lot of supervisors and managers, they don't hear much sometimes, and being able to like if you're a frontline worker, be able to communicate appreciation to them in a way that's not like brown nosing, sort of looking like you're trying to get a favor, but being authentic about it. So there's just some basic things that flow from it's authentic, it's person to person, and in the ways that's important to the recipient. I think that's the other thing is lots of people, it's pretty common to start off communicating appreciation in the language that's important to you. But, if it's words, then 60% of your team members, you're speaking a language that's not going to, impact them much. And so that's why we really go through. People can read the book. We've got an audio version, but we've got online videos on YouTube. But I'll send you a sample report of our trades assessment. That's the other thing. We created a different industry version because the actions look different. Like an act of service in the trades might be show up at the end of the day and help clean up, the job site, or maybe show up at the beginning of the day and help them load the supplies or whatever, versus in an office setting, it'd be something different. So I'll send you a sample of that and also our group profile so people can take a look at it.
That would be awesome. I do want to touch on, yeah, the specific trades and how you see a difference between the trades and other industries. But specifically, if I'm going to my crew of guys, there's three guys. It's a hot day. I know one of them is a gift, is their love language or appreciation language, and I bring that single person lunch, electrolyte drink on a hot day, but I don't bring it to those other two people. That doesn't make sense, right? It's about showing it, and maybe one of those other employees are a act or quality time, so that's their time to sit around with their employees. So it's not singling people out, but bringing people together, and realizing that this might be not one of those guys' love languages, so you have to show them an or appreciation language in another way at another time as well.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, you don't like gifts, so I'm not going to give you a gift. It's just that realizing that it's going to impact people differently, and to, people get discouraged sometimes. They're working on a project and things aren't going well. They're just obstacles that they hit. And we found that appreciation and encouragement are pretty similar. It's the time frame. Appreciation is really focused on the past, something that they've demonstrated. And it doesn't have to be always work related. I'll come back to that. But encouragement is present and future. It's like, the same words or same spending some time to let them know that you understand they're frustrated, can encourage them. So it can work both ways.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes. When it's often too late to take action, to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. One thing that I noticed doing the five love languages, we were doing it in a group setting, and there was a clear divide between males and females, and what similarities in those love languages that we were picking out. Males were mostly words of affirmation. Females were mostly gifts, quality time. And coming back to, you have a specific determination for trades in understanding their five languages of appreciation. Have you noticed clear divides from industry to industry in terms of what the predominant primary and secondary appreciation words are?
Yeah, so first, one thing that has surprised me over time is that there's really no gender difference across the languages. I mean, they are incredibly similar percentage-wise. It may be off one or two, but it's not a big difference. And that's been true. We've been doing this 15 years, and this is repeatedly true. And similarly, broadband population. And when we do this, our assessments in 9 different languages in the different, in Brazil and Thailand and Czechoslovakia. I mean, they're all pretty much come out the same. But trades differ a little bit. As you might expect, acts of service pops up there a little bit, but it's more that it's just that words come down a little bit and acts of service go up. It's not like a big, teeter-totter kind of change. But acts of service and in that realm, quality time tends to go down, at least with supervisors. But quality time with peers, it raises up a little bit.
Going back to that mining company or any other companies that you've kind of dealt with over time, a case study of sorts of a company implementing this, what are the results that they get on the back end? Is this obviously, I would assume retention would be one of them, but in terms of a company-wide thing, what kind of results are you kind of seeing from implementing this?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that because that's a key part. I mean, being honest, I mean, the goal is not just for people to feel good, that's nice, but we want to help companies function better. And clearly, retention improves significantly. People stay. And, there used to be saying people don't leave a job, they leave a manager. That was sort of true in the corporate world. That's not really true anymore, especially for younger workers. It's peer relationships that keep them connected. And so we found that having team members learn how to show appreciation to one another, and again, that's a key. It's not just top down, is that really creates connections between them, and that it's also that they get to know each other. So the point I want to make is it's not always about work. Sometimes it's about, hey, this guy went on a fishing tournament and he got third place, in a smallmouth bass fishing tournament, and just give him some kudos for that. It's not always about how hard they work or what they get done, or that maybe somebody's coaching their kids' hockey team, and that can be an act of service. Maybe somebody else has done that before and they know some good, training videos to watch or whatever. And so it's about life, and because, employees are people. And one of the things that COVID taught us is that real life outside of work the impact flows back and forth. And so work obviously impacts life, but if you've got a spouse that's maybe sick or in the hospital, what's something that you could do to help your colleague out? It's not always at work, and so trying to broaden it. So retention, people enjoy their work more. You get better customer service ratings because when people don't feel valued, they tend to be a little bit touchy and irritable. And and when they do feel valued, they tend to relate better to your customers. Profitability and productivity go up, sort of, and also creative problem solving, which could be an issue in trades. A long time ago, I mean, early 20s, I was a trim carpenter. I got out of it pretty quick. It was not my best skill set, so I learned. But I grew up working in my dad's factory, and knowing that people notice you and care and for you, and it can be motivating, and people stick to projects, and maybe some creative problem solving happens that otherwise wouldn't happen.
How does a company and their leadership implement this without it feeling fake? Because if in the past these things were just not addressed and there was no appreciation going out at all, but all of a sudden the employees know that this has been kind of brought on board and all of a sudden they're being appreciated. How does a company kind of their leadership show that it's actually genuine as opposed to it feeling fake to employees?
Yeah, well, how does anything, feel genuine? And one is that it's not just a one and done kind of thing, right? I mean, what we found is that we have a pretty simple system. It's not very expensive, and organizations can implement it as part of their HR program, if you will, and find out, how their people like to be shown appreciation. And then we have an online train the trainer course that people can take. Takes a couple hours to go through how to take teams through the process of talking about this, and maybe you set aside a half a day, on a holiday, before a holiday or something, and go through it. It's part of it is also, I think, not doing it alone. I think if a leader is considering it, they really need to talk to their next level leaders, supervisors, and find somebody that's sort of interested in it. You don't want to try to win. Your first job is not to win over the person that's like, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that, because there's people like that, and we just work around them, and you find somebody that's got sort of, that'd be sort of interesting to find out how to encourage and show appreciation. Maybe read the book together or listen to it, or and then say, okay. Usually we usually start with a sort of um, just a trial group. We don't try to implement it across the whole organization. Say, hey, this supervisor's willing. Let's do this with their team and sort of learn from it, because you see how it fits or what maybe needs to be tweaked a little bit for your organization. And then what happens? I mean, this we went all the way across Miller Coors and DirecTV, going across the world with Caterpillar, is people hear about it and say, well, how come they're getting to do that? And it sounds sort of cool, and it sort of just grows virally across the organization. So um, uh, I think that's the best way. Trying to do it on your own, it's not going to have much impact. You need to have a sort of a small cadre of people that are trying it.
Is there any companies that you've helped along the way where they found that this might be a difficult thing to get buy-in from their leadership team, or um, how can we kind of implement this without it feeling fake or something? Because I can see, um, for me personally, if I was to talk about this and I knew that it might come across to my employees as fake, I would just be upfront with them and say that, hey, I struggle with empathy. I struggle with just this. So this system is going to help me show that appreciation to you guys that I may not have been showing you in the past.
Yeah, I was actually working with a cancer hospital in Erie, Pennsylvania, and after sort of talking to the supervisors and managers, a supervisor came up and he said, "Hey, I am not doing this. I know I'm not, and I need, to, but I want to." And he said, "I'm going to talk to my team about it," and we talked about it. I think just being open and honest to say, somehow I've missed this and I'm not good at it, but I'd like to learn and grow. I mean, put yourself in sort of a growth mode rather than, I'm an expert about it and say, like for us to try this and see how it goes and learn from one another how to make it work. Another point on that is the top leaders, it's great if they're in and on it, but we often start in the middle. There's just like a supervisor, a manager, and they get permission, but it's like these guys aren't doing, they're not interested. That's fine, but go for it and start there. And sometimes it just stays there. It doesn't, maybe it's just in that division rather than all the way across. So if your owners or managers aren't that interested, say, would you mind if we tried this and it doesn't cost a lot of money? So, I mean, an assessment costs $25 for a person. So that's what, maybe 3 cups of coffee or something. So
We want to take a break from today's episode to talk about marketing. Are you looking to take your hardscape business to the next level? Well, this is brought to you by Patio SEO, the leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed, who owns multiple hardscape businesses across the country. And here's the kicker. You're not just getting access to any team. You're getting access to the very team that helped grow James's own companies, plus hundreds of others in the industry. Whether you need a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, Patio SEO has got you covered. They've been in your shoes and know exactly what works. We've had James Reed on the podcast a couple of times, and they're some of our more popular episodes, talking about branding, talking about how he's built companies across the country. And with that, he needs lots of leads, which means he's had to perfect his branding and marketing. And now you can have access to that same in-house team that he has access to for his own hardscape company. So if you're ready to build your brand and see some serious growth, check them out at patioseo.com. That's patioseo.com, or follow James on Instagram at road to 100ms. That's road to 100ms. Let's get your business the attention it deserves. Now back to the episode. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode. With the different 5 languages and with the companies that you've helped along the way during your time, has there been any example of showing words of affirmation, showing an act of service, quality time, gifts that is really unique, that you thought, hey, this is actually really interesting, that I haven't seen this done in this way before?
Yeah, what's fun is seeing organizations and companies sort of make it part of their culture. And so one company, actually, I think it was an office of part of DirecTV, they they got T-shirts made for the different languages. And, my language is, words of affirmation. And then some places, to make it easier, they bought sort of a bunch of thank you cards, or sort of maybe blank cards, and had those available in the office or someplace, maybe the break room, people could pick up, just so it made it easier versus them having to go to the store. Like I said, we've had hats, we've had places make songs about it. So and it's sort of fun to celebrate, like at whether it's a Christmas party or some, a picnic. I guess a key thing is to make it part of your culture, that if you have a team meeting, or a company-wide meeting, to to mention it and to talk about it and maybe have somebody give a story about it, whether that giving it or receiving it, and making it part. Often what we encourage groups is when you have a team meeting, like a weekly team meeting or whatever, just say, hey, anybody got any positive stories about, feeling valued and appreciated? It's good at the beginning to maybe queue up somebody so has somebody to be willing to tell their story versus silence, but sort of making it part of the fabric of company communication, I think works well because there's sort of structured way to do it. You just do it, and it doesn't feel real genuine. But then if you rely solely on spontaneous, you know, life takes more than just spontaneous kind of thing. So sort of a combination of both really works well.
And how often should appreciation be shown? Like if business owner finds that one of their employees is gifts, is their appreciation language? Is it like every single day they're bringing in that employee a gift?
Probably not, right?
Okay.
So, on the other hand, I ask people, have you ever felt appreciated too much, authentically? And so, you know, I can tell you this, it's more than once a year or maybe once a quarter at their employee review, that doesn't feel uh, real authentic, but and it's going to vary too according to the person and the relationship. There's some people that maybe your right hand person, they know you value them, but you better make sure they know because, like we said, almost 80% of the people leave when they don't feel valued. So you don't want to lose key team members. But it's one of those things, and also you can't, unless you got a really small company, you can't really have a responsibility to show appreciation to everybody, right? It's sort of like you've got to share it among each other. And um, that's where I think our training process works well because it sort of, we send out a weekly newsletter with some reminders and tips and that kind of stuff just to help implement it. But, you know, every couple weeks would be good, 2 or 3 weeks, and for somebody that's you got a good solid relationship, it probably doesn't need to be that often further down the road. So, but daily's probably not gonna happen.
Through your studies and then starting writing this book and what all the experiences that you've had up until this point, was there anything that you've changed your mind about on employees, on culture, on motivation, starting from your studies to actually writing this book and onwards? Is there anything that's like changed your mind or been like, hey, I didn't believe this before, but the evidence is there that I do believe it now?
Well, one thing that I think is changing culturally is that, first of all, I've been amazed that there was no gender difference. I mean, that just was a total surprise to me. But it is what it is. But interesting, I think over time, as culture has changed, um, both quality time are going up, as is physical touch is going up in some settings. Um, and I just think that in maybe non-trades careers, I mean, office-based kind of things with remote work and all this, people are just very disconnected and feel loneliness has really risen a lot. And I just think not that, appreciation is the fix all to everything, but people need to be connected with one another and understand. The other thing that happens is as you get to know people and how they feel appreciated, um, you understand them better. So when they don't say a thanks to you, because that's not their language, it's not offensive to you. And so what we found is that conflict and tension go down as well, which is, a key thing.
Well, Dr. Paul White, I think that's a great way to wrap up this episode. I really do appreciate your time. Where can our audience go find out more about you, yourself, the five languages of appreciation, anywhere that they can find out more about this and yourself there?
Yeah, so our main website is appreciationatwork.com, and it's the word at appreciationatwork.com. You can also do just drpaulwhite.com. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Instagram channel. They're both Appreciation at Work. You can look for there. And like I said, I'll send samples of the report and the group profile, and also that New York Times article about the miners, that if they're interested, they can take a look at that.
That's great. Am I able to link those in the show notes that our audience can actually click on them and see them too?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Dr. Paul White, thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Glad to be with you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Links for Dr. Paul White's book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, is linked in the show notes, as well as more of his resources there if you want to learn more about him. And we would appreciate it if you left this podcast a rating, review, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to this. That really does help us. And also supporting our sponsors. If you're looking for H&A tickets, you can get those 50% off using the promo code HTH. That'll be in the show notes as well. And before we leave you, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA, if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. PatioSEO.com. And now you know Patio SEO can take your hardscape business to the next level. James Reed and his expert team have built a reputation on success, not just for their own companies, but for hundreds of others just like yours. So don't wait. Visit patioseo.com to learn more and get started. But also be sure to follow James's journey on Instagram at Road to 100 M's. That's Road to 100 MS for behind the scenes tips and insights. And I do recommend checking that out and following along to that. Ready to build your brand? Patio SEO is here to help you every step of the way. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And we look forward to meeting you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.